Hi, this is Scares for You, and this is Blood River Bridge Part 2. So if you found this video on accident, you gotta go to Part 1 first. I also have all kinds of shorts. Everything that is read on my channel or podcast is written by me. Alright, are we ready? Thanks for returning if you're coming back. Blood River Bridge Part 2. The next morning started the same as any other until April turned on her radio. The sheriff's voice came on right away, and April knew immediately that something was wrong. There was concern in every word he spoke. Not something she heard from this man very often. It was one of the things she loved about him. He was always so strong. April, I need you to drive over to the Matthews residence. Miss Matthews called in because her husband Ken did not return home last night. He said nothing else, and after a slight pause, April answered. All right, Sheriff, I'm on my way, she said with a hint of anger. He didn't even say good morning. 20 minutes later, April arrived at the Matthews home to find Ken's wife very distraught. It was hard for April to understand her through the frantic sobbing. 30 years, and he has always come home or called. Something horrible has happened to him. I just know it. Miss Matthews, would it be okay if I went to Ken's office? Her hands were almost constant on her collar. Of course, Deputy, Miss Matthews said, still sobbing. Ken's office was tidy, and it didn't take long for April to find his appointment book. There were only 3 appointments marked down that day. April sat behind his desk and began to make calls. She got the same information from all 3 numbers she dialed. Ken had not shown up for any of his appointments. April's heart pounded fast when she came to the realization that Winter Snow had been the last and only person to have seen Ken that day. April went straight to the sheriff's office, taking only a few moments to fix her hair. Sheriff, we've got a problem. Ken is definitely missing, and the only person who had contact with him yesterday is the new man in town, Winter Snow. Ken's car? At his office. Well, then, do you think you can track down this Mr. Snow and bring him in for questioning? Although April was not in a good mood, she couldn't pass up an opportunity to flirt with the sheriff. She leaned over the sheriff's desk, unaware that she was puckering her lips and trying to make them look plump and enticing. Don't worry about me, Sheriff. I can handle anything. The sheriff blinked once, seeming not to notice April's come-ons. He simply folded his hands and asked, Do you need anything else, Deputy? April was surprised by this question. It was the first time the sheriff had ever called her deputy and not April. No, Sheriff, I'll just be on my way. She drove to the hotel that Winter was registered at, and he was not there. She stopped at the coffee shop, the diner, and the store before heading out to find his house. It wouldn't take long. There was only a few properties for rent out there. But April found nothing, each house empty that she drove to. So giving up, she called her findings into the sheriff and headed back to the diner for dinner. As she sat waiting her order, Winter Snow walked up on her once again, startling her for the 3rd time as he spoke. I've been looking for you all day, April said. Where have you been? As he began to talk, she was wondering how it was that he was always just suddenly there, leaving her with a slight shiver of surprise every time. Winter looked at her curiously. I was getting my stuff off the plane. I just came back to town and was headed for my house, but I thought I'd stop here first. Why, April? She glanced down before he could look into her eyes. Deputy, she said sternly as she stood. Since you have shown up, I am now back on duty. Ken is missing, and you were the last one to see him. Me and the sheriff have a few questions for you. Would you come down to the station with me?" "Sure, Deputy," Winter replied. "Well, let's go." April's authority shined through when she said this. It was the first time that Winter respected her as an officer of the law, and he followed her without hesitation to the car. As they sat in the sheriff's office, April dialed the sheriff's home phone number, but there was no answer. She tried his cell, and he picked up after the second ring. "Sheriff, hi. I have Winter Snow here. Would you like to come in and question him?" "Deputy, is that you?" "Yes, Sheriff." "Oh, I was not for sure who this was at first." April heard a woman's voice muffled in the background. Her heart pumped rapidly, and she could feel the blood rushing to her face, warming it instantly. The sheriff's voice filled her ears again. "I'm a little busy right now, Deputy. Why don't you go ahead and question him without me?" "Yes, Sheriff, bye." April's voice now had a hint of melancholy behind it as she hung up the phone and turned her attention to Winter. His gray eyes sparkled in the office light, and as she started talking to him, she was once again trapped in his gaze with no way out. "Well, I guess it's just you and me. I just need to know where you went with Ken, and could you fill me in?" So cold, those eyes. A shiver ran the length of her spine. Winter started telling her what she wanted to know, but April's attention was not on him. It was on the voice in the background that she heard while talking to the sheriff. The woman's tone seemed so familiar. Who could it have been? "And that's about all we did," Winter finished. April caught his eye and felt almost at peace. "One more question. Did he have any unusual calls or mention any other appointments that day to you?" Her hands at her side relaxed as she was questioning him. "No unusual calls, just one I thought was his wife by the way he spoke to her." April looked at him with a hint of disappointment in her eyes. Winter gave her no helpful information, but that woman's voice. April knew her for sure. "Come on, I'll drive you back to the diner." As April drove Winter back to the diner, silence occupied the car. When they arrived, he invited her to join him for dessert, and she accepted gracefully. Once they had ordered, small conversation followed. "I'm sorry," April began. "No need to apologize, April. I understand," Winter interrupted. "I was wondering, that girl at the coffee shop, does she have a man in her life?" "Maggie? Not that I know of. Here, I thought you had an interest in me." "Yes, I did, April, but you seem to have no interest in me." "Fair enough. Maggie loves flowers. I'll give you her home address so you can have some delivered." Once their dessert came, they ate over friendly conversation, but a nagging feeling stayed in the pit of her stomach, and at the same time, she found herself intrigued. She had to pull away before his eyes swallowed her. April ended the evening before finishing dessert and drove home. The next morning, April did not go to the coffee shop as usual, but instead found herself standing on the bridge, staring down at the raging waters. Why was she here? It was so strange. She couldn't even remember driving here. Leaning further over the railing, she found herself longing to feel the cool water surrounding her body. She was amazed at the amount of snow that had fallen over the past few days. Last year at this time, there was only a few inches, and now already a few feet of luscious white snow covered every inch of the river's banks, making it look like a cloud that grew trees. It was only broken up by the river and the bridge and her standing in the middle of it all. A chill ran down her as a movement just off the river bank into the tree line caught her attention. Suspicion built inside her as she pushed it aside quickly. After all, it was probably just an animal. April headed back to her car, turning on the radio as she went. "Deputy, you on yet?" the sheriff's voice asked her. "Yeah, Sheriff, I'm here." When the sheriff's voice returned, April could tell it was just as the day before. Something was wrong. She found herself hoping that he had a horrible night with that whispering woman. Maggie didn't open the coffee shop this morning, as I'm sure you noticed. She felt no need to correct him, afraid he might ask why she was there on the bridge, and she had no clue. "She's not answering her home or cell phone. I sent Denise over to check it out. Maggie's car is there and nobody's home. I need you to take a look, to come down to the office and take my statement." Her mind still wandering about her mind was still wandering about her surroundings when the word statement caught her off guard. "Your statement?" April's hands now forcing her collar into the right place. "Yeah, it seems I was the last one to see Maggie." All right, and that's the end of part 2. Sorry about the little stumbles. I'm still learning, so I hope you stick with me and come back for Blood River Bridge, part 3.